The early morning hours weighed on Ethan like a damp shroud. Another night shift at the hospital, another stretch of time where the world outside seemed to cease to exist, leaving only the sterile, humming quiet of the building. The silence wasn't truly silent, was it? It was broken, always, by the monotonous beeping of machines, the rhythmic pulse of life support, and the occasional jarring creak of the medication cart as it rolled over worn linoleum. His eyes burned, a familiar ache that had settled deep behind his sockets. This was a special kind of exhaustion, a physical and mental fatigue so profound that it began to turn the cold, unforgiving corridor lights into a pulsating, blurry smear. Have you ever felt so tired that your very perception of reality starts to warp, to fray at the edges like old cloth? I have, and I can tell you it's a terrifying place to be. He walked down the long, lonely pharmacy hallway, the path he had trod 1,000 times before. The sharp, clean scent of antiseptic, a smell so ingrained in his memory it was almost a part of him, was now mixed with something else. Something strange, almost sweet. A cloying, sickly sweetness he couldn't quite identify, like flowers left to wilt in a forgotten room. With each step he took, the weight of the medication boxes he carried seemed to grow heavier, pressing down on him, a physical manifestation of his weariness. Then a flicker, a shadow in the corner of his eye, a sudden dark movement that made him whip his head around. Nothing, just the faint, distorted reflection of his own tired face in the darkened window pane at the end of the hall. Or was it? For a split second, the reflection seemed to linger, a darker, more gaunt version of himself staring back before dissolving into the blackness of the night outside. He shook his head, trying to clear the fog. It was just fatigue. It had to be. "Ethan, are you okay?" The voice was a mere whisper, a soft, breathy sound that seemed to come from directly above him, near the neatly stacked IV bags on the top shelf. He froze mid-step, his blood turning to ice in his veins. His heart, which had been beating a slow, tired rhythm, suddenly hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird. No one else should have been in this part of the pharmacy. It was locked down for the night, accessible only to him. He turned slowly, deliberately, his neck stiff, as he scanned the crowded, towering shelves, packed with boxes, bottles, and medical supplies. The sound didn't repeat. There was nothing but the low, almost imperceptible hum of the vaccine refrigerator, a constant, droning companion on these lonely nights. Was this it? Was the sleep deprivation he'd been fighting for days, for weeks, finally hitting him harder than ever before? Was his mind finally breaking? He tried to push the thought away, forcing himself to keep going, to focus on the task at hand. His hands trembled slightly, a subtle tremor he couldn't control, as he began to organize the vials of medicine, their glass surfaces cool against his skin. But the hallway, this familiar finite space, seemed to stretch before him, elongating into an impossible, endless tunnel. The room doors, all identical, all painted the same sterile shade of off-white, began to blur together, their numbers and nameplates losing all meaning. And then he saw her. A pale, almost translucent figure standing at the very end of the corridor, partially obscured by the shadows in front of a darkened room. At first, he thought it was another nurse, maybe someone from a different ward who had gotten lost. But no. The shape was too ethereal, too indistinct. She seemed to waver, like a heat haze rising from asphalt. And then, when he blinked, desperate to clear his vision, she vanished. Just gone. A profound, bone-deep chill ran up his spine, cold and sharp. My mind is playing tricks on me, right? It has to be. Because if it's not, if what I just saw was real, then what was that? Sweat, cold and clammy, trickled down his back, soaking the collar of his scrubs. He tried to focus, to ground himself in reality. He read the labels on the medication, sounding out the names in his head. Diazepam, fentanyl, the patient names. Miller, Rodriguez, simple, concrete facts. But then another sound reached him, a muffled sob, faint and sorrowful, that seemed to come from inside the very walls of the hospital. He stopped, holding his breath, and leaned in, pressing his ear against the cool, painted plaster. The crying grew louder for a fleeting moment, a sound of pure, unadulterated grief, before it stopped as abruptly as it had begun, plunging him back into the humming silence. A sudden, intense feeling washed over Ethan. A presence. He felt it beside him, a pocket of cold air, a palpable shift in the atmosphere. He could almost feel a cold breath of air on the back of his neck. He turned sharply, his body reacting before his mind could catch up, knocking over a box of sterile gauze that clattered loudly on the floor. No one, absolutely no one there. The hallway was as empty as it had been seconds before, but the feeling, the suffocating feeling of being watched was thick, oppressive, clinging to him like a shroud. Was he finally losing control? Was this the breaking point? He somehow managed to finish the shift, moving like an automaton through the last few hours. Exhausted, yes, but now a new, sharper emotion had taken hold. Terror. Every shadow that danced in his peripheral vision, every unexpected sound that echoed down the long, empty corridors became a potential ghost, a sign that he was not alone. Was it just the profound, cumulative effect of sleep deprivation, a brain starved of rest and creating its own phantoms in the dark? Or is there something else that truly haunts the quiet, lonely halls of that hospital, something that only he, in his most vulnerable and exhausted state, was able to perceive? Do you believe that fatigue, true bone-deep fatigue, can open portals to the unexplainable, blurring the line between our world and something else?